Okay, April 24, back to the old Blue Demon project. Bob Kurkowski, my buddy Bob, we talked on the phone this morning, and I mentioned, you know, the cheapest way to go, we're talking about these brake lines, by the way, April 24th, it's Wednesday. Cheapest way to go would be to get English fittings and just use the nylon, you know, the nuts, ferrules, and nylon brake line. Cheap. And that would get us up and running, no matter what we decided to do. That'd get the gold caliper up and running, right? Because the issue we have with the gold caliper that fits the mount that's on the cart, that fits the rotor that's on the cart, is this brake line, right, with the cracked nut. Right, it's got a crack. So we pulled out, he said, what about the Renspeed? And I told him, I said, well, I've replaced all that stuff with English fittings. He says, well, what about that brake line? So, genius. I go out and get it, and sure as anything, I'm excited. This one's not broke, everything looks good. And there's no nut on this end at the master cylinder. The ferrule came right off. Now, I could mess around trying to pull a nut, pull the ferrule and a nut off, and maybe try to reuse this with a good nut. But I still have to buy the 10 bucks worth of new seals from Mondo with the fuel tank I have to get. That's going to come from Mondo as well. But we still don't know if the bores are in a good enough condition that even new seals would seal up, that wouldn't, you know, bleed, you know, wouldn't hold the bleed or even leak fluid. That's what the Renspeed brakes were doing. The seals were actually leaking fluid, and the brake pads, luckily Larry gave me extra brake pads for that stuff. The pads were toast. They were completely soaked in brake fluid on one of the front brake calipers. I believe it was the right front. So, no chance that we're going to try to use this. Thanks to Joe Wallace, who must have watched the video, or maybe Randy watched it, or Glenda watched it, and maybe they got a hold of him, I don't know. But he offered, if I went down to Toledo and bought him lunch, because him and I like to have lunch, he says, I'll give you the 50 millimeter axle, the bearings, the cassettes, and the rear hubs, so you can use this with this setup without having to make a spacer and stuff, which is cool. But I don't have any 50 millimeter sprockets, and I don't want to buy 50 millimeter sprockets right now. The 40 millimeter sprockets will fit this cart, they'll fit Larry's cart, and they'll fit the laydown cart. So kind of want to keep everything in the same family, you know what I'm saying? So we're back to, I suppose, spending 10 bucks on this as a backup plan if we can get this to work. You know, get a nut on this thing here and be able to use this other old brake line. Man, I saw the writing on this said, I think it said 1996, man. I don't have my up close. 11 of 96. That's a manufacture date, 11 of 96. I wonder if there's anything in this one. I don't have my up close glasses on, but this is some old school stuff, man. For 10 bucks, I mean, I got to get the fuel tank anyway. We'll probably just get the seals anyway and see if we can do this. But I think the way to go is going to be to make the spacer that is going to go here and here with a hole, with a recess in in this side. The side would be out here, and put an O-ring in it. And you know, we don't know if that'll hold a bleed. You know, it's not. I mean, it should. You know, if you do it right, it should. what I just found was taking the mounting half that mounts to the bracket, took it over here and made sure that it fit the bolt pattern, which it does, and that the span on it will fit the radius of the rotor, that the rotor wasn't too big. And guess what? It worked out. So we need to measure the rotor, set the halves back together, measure what kind of gap we've got in here to find out how big of a spacer we're going to need. Right, so we'll measure in here and measure the rotor, and then we'll you know, leave a little extra, not a ton, but a little bit if we can, and see what the spacing is going to need to be on this thing, and then we'll start working on 2 pieces of a spacer. We'll have to probably silicone the thing on so it doesn't move, because generally when you have a spacer in here, you'd also have a dowel or a pin to hold it in place so it doesn't move as you're putting it together, assembling it and tightening it down, right? Because you're going to have 3 bolts going through here. Actually, you have a little bolt here, right? You got the little bolt, and then you got the 2 big bolts that hold the halves together. Then these bolts hold the caliper to the actual bracket. So, a little bit of fabricating to do, no big deal. I got to look around, see if I got some. I used to have a bunch of end mills. I may have given them all away to cut the recess, but if not, we'll get a drill bit the right size, and we'll stub it off, and we'll sharpen the edges just enough. You know, we could probably even drill a little bit first, and then just kind of try to use counterbore type action to just to get us a little recess in there, and get an O-ring in it, and well, then it's on like Donkey Kong. We won't have to mess with anything here. We won't have to change any of the fittings here. We'll be able to put this right back on, throw fluid in it, and bleed it. Pretty sure they all had fluid in it, so I'm pretty sure it all worked the way it was. So, yeah, it looks pretty sketchy on brake pads on this thing, man. I mean, there isn't much of anything there. We're going to need to do a little more homework, but got to climb up top and see if I can find the steering shaft. That we know for sure is just not right for this setup. So just plugging away, folks, plugging away. That's what we got to do. We're going to have to start. We'll find out how thick we need to go. I'm pretty sure a piece of that 1/4-inch aluminum will probably work real well, as long as it's not too fat. And we'll go from there. And we'll bring you some more as we're getting her done. We're going to throw the gear on Braden's go-kart today, so in case he wants to come over this weekend, it'll be hooked up and ready for him. Godspeed. Hang in there, y'all. Maybe we'll bring you an update later.